This is certainly not a video that I wanted to have to make, but sometimes things don't always go as planned, so here we are. Today, we are gonna be replacing one of the axles in the FRS. Now, if you guys haven't already done so, please consider hitting that subscribe button and giving this video a thumbs up if you are enjoying the content. I'm doing my best to get videos out to you guys every single Tuesday. I'm dealing with the Midwest winters right now, so I can't take the car out and do much driving, but it has given me some time to work on some things and improve the car for this upcoming season. As I was installing the new clutch, I was taking a look underneath the car and noticed that the rear driver's side was covered in a nice black sludge, which is usually not a good sign. And upon further inspection, I found this lovely slit in the CV boot. As most of you guys know, this axle spins super fast, which means the grease inside of that boot is getting flung every which way, which is why my suspension components are now all covered in a nice black coating. We've got a couple different options. The cheapest option is to just replace that CV boot and re-grease the joint. You just need to make sure that the axle has not been damaged and it's not making any clicking noises or anything like that. Otherwise, you're just gonna end up having to replace the axle anyway, which is the second option. You can go with a new OEM axle, which is about 400 bucks, or you can get a used one on eBay for 80 to 120 bucks, which is the route we're taking to save a little bit of money. Now, before I can actually install it on the car, I need to go clean up that lovely mess it made. I've got everything as clean as I can get it for now, so we can move on to removing the axle. Obviously, I have the wheel off, so that gives us access to this axle nut, which we need to remove. But you can see that it has been punched here, so what we need to do is take a flathead screwdriver or a punch of your own and a hammer to hammer that back out so that it's round, so that we can remove the nut. With that rounded out, we need a 32mm socket, an impact, or a big breaker bar to remove that nut. We're gonna remove the two bolts that are holding the hub to the lower control arm and trailing arm next. These both should be 17mm bolts and nuts. We can now carefully hammer out the axle from the hub using a hammer. You may also need a flathead screwdriver on the end here once it gets to a certain point where your hammer no longer reaches it. Just make sure you're not damaging your studs or anything like that. Once you get to a certain point, you're also going to need to move the hub just a little bit to give you some wiggle room to continue hammering the axle out. I've got it pretty much removed from the axle. I just need to move it around a little bit and help it out on the back side here. And then once it's completely out, I should be able to lower it down. With the axle out of the hub, we can take a large pry bar or fork like I have here. We're gonna wedge it in between the gap of the axle and the rear diff. And then I got a hammer, which I'll whack it with to pop it out of the diff, like so. Once the axle's popped out, we should be able to slide it out the rest of the way. You may need the help of the pry bar again, but we are good to go. Now we can take our new axle and insert it into the rear diff. I've very lightly greased the splines of the axle before I install it here. You obviously want to be careful not to damage any of the boots. And we also need to line up the splines so that it slides in to the rear diff. I've got the axle partially in, but you can see that there is still a gap here in between the axle and the rear diff. So what I'm gonna do is take a hammer and we're gonna give the end of the axle a couple taps to slide the axle in the rest of the way and pop it into place. If you're not sure if the axle is in all the way, you can always check the other side, or you can use this for reference. Essentially, you want this metal shield portion of the axle to be inset into the groove of the rear diff. The axle is installed into the diff, so now we need to reinstall it into the hub by moving things around a little bit. Again, just be careful you don't damage the boots. You can see on the back side that I've got it partially in, so we're just gonna keep wiggling things around to try and get it all the way back into place. I've gotten it through to the point where I can thread on the nut. We're not gonna tighten this down just yet. We'll leave it loose like that, and then we're going to reinstall the bolts for the trailing arm and lower control arm. For the lower control arm bolt, you may need to use a hoist stand or a jack like I've got here to line it up into place. We need to torque the lower control arm bolt to 59 foot-pounds and then the trailing arm bolt to 81 foot-pounds. The last step is torquing down the axle nut to 160 foot-pounds, and then we're gonna take a hammer and flathead screwdriver and hammer the nut in so that it doesn't loosen up. With that, we can reinstall the wheel and we are pretty much set. Just gotta make sure everything is torqued to spec and nothing is leaking. Now, I know there are a couple different ways you can tackle this project. Some people drop the diff, some people remove the bolt for the upper control arm, but I'm pretty sure I showed you guys the easiest way you can go about this. If you guys are doing this yourself, I'll drop the part number to the axle down in the description. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. To remove the nut. That's tightening it. God damn it. Why is this so difficult? Now, if you guys haven't already done so, please consider. Oh boy, this is gonna be fun.